Hi, this is Dennis Gage. This week we're special guests of the National Automobile Museum here in Reno, Nevada. Now, you may not have heard of this museum because it's relatively new. It opened in 1989, but I'll bet you've heard of the Harrah collection. When Bill Harrah passed away in the late 70s, the idea for the museum took shape, and 175 of Harrah's cars were donated to get the project rolling. Later, we'll take a guided tour of this multi-million-dollar showcase for the automobile. And speaking of showcases, Edsel Ford, the man who brought to life many of the cars that are showcased in museums around the world, like this beautiful 1932 Lincoln, is the subject of this week's Classic Designers and Engineers feature.
This company has had a great deal of experience in the course of its 33 years of manufacturing. And one thing it has learned is that the principles on which it is founded are pretty sound, and they wear well in all sorts of times.
Edsel Ford was one of the all-time greats as a designer and innovator with the automobile. But to understand Edsel, you have to really go back and remember that he was the son of Henry Ford, who was the greatest pioneer in the automobile industry ever. And somehow Edsel had to prove himself. And he had a wonderful aesthetic feeling that the old man didn't have and didn't care about. Somehow, he just plain had good taste.
When Henry Ford bought Lincoln in 1921, he made Edsel nominally the president of Lincoln. And the original Lincoln, as designed by Henry Leland, was mechanically an excellent automobile. Stylistically, it was a pretty homely looking car, and Edsel looked upon the Lincoln as a chance to begin to exercise his design ideas. He first did this by making arrangements with outside coach builders, and eventually that carried him into a wider influence within the company. The first Ford where you really see Edsel's influence is, of course, the Model A in 1928.
Finally, Henry realized that Edsel had a flair for this thing that he didn't really know about or understand or care about. He knew he needed it. And he followed that up with a beautiful line of Ford V8s from 1932 to 1940. These were so good looking. Every kid wanted a Ford V8 convertible, you know. Plymouth, Chevy, you wouldn't even think about it.
Edsel and Bob Gregory worked together from the 30s until Edsel's death in 1943. And it was a very fruitful partnership that brought forth a number of really milestone designs. First one probably was the Lincoln Zephyr in 1936, which was a streamlined car in the idea of the Chrysler Airflow, although a much better looking and much more successful car than the Chrysler Airflow.
It did have a few problems, and one of the problems was overheating. So the engineer said, Edsel, please help us come up with some design that will get more air in down below. Gregory and Edsel talked about this car, and the result was the 38 Lincoln Zephyr, which was almost as much of a sensation as the 1936 was, because it established a whole new front that was to influence the entire world. It was the first car with a low grille. It was a real coup. Say, if form follows function, if there was ever a form that followed function, it was that beautiful design.
The next great one was, of course, the Lincoln Continental. This started life actually as a personal car for Edsel, and the design was so popular among Edsel's friends in Florida that they decided to put it into production.
It was absolutely the most stunning car ever made by Ford Motor Company, maybe anybody in the country, and it was the masterpiece of Edsel. There was never anything before as nice. I'm not sure there'll ever be anything after as nice.
Welcome back to My Classic Car. When you walk around the National Automobile Museum here in Reno, one thing becomes immediately obvious. This place was conceived and built by true car enthusiasts. The cars and the displays are first class.
Dennis.
Jackie.
Are you ready for your personal tour?
Hey, when it comes to cars, I'm always ready. Oh, Jackie Frady, Executive Director of the National Automobile Museum.
Let's go.
All right. really got a little bit of everything. Beautiful 810 Cord. And what, Jackie, is this?
It's a 1937 Airmobile. It's an experimental car. It was the only one built, air-cooled, three-wheeled, and it was designed to be a low-cost, mass-produced car, but it just never caught on.
Gee, go figure. Now, this is another stunning car.
Oh, isn't it beautiful? It's a 1927 Lincoln coaching Brougham, and it's a beautiful example of custom coach work.
It looks like something Cinderella should go to the ball in.
I agree.
Now, the museum itself, how often is it open?
We're open every day of the year except Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And you've got 4 galleries?
4 galleries, over 220 cars, 4 period street settings with timelines and building facades, a state-of-the-art movie theater, and there's always something new for the visitor to see. We have changing exhibits, cars going in on loan, coming out.
So you loan cars to other museums?
We do, and then cars come in on to loan to us as well. And this is an example of a 1921 Rolls-Royce that's on loan to the museum. Beautiful coppered body car. The body is made of full sheets of copper. The wood trim is ebony. The bright work is German silver. It's just an incredible car.
The windshields are stunning. Curved glass, beveled sides.
Beautiful lines, a boat tail.
I bet that's hard to keep shiny.
Yes, that would be very hard to keep shining.
We have other galleries.
We do. Let's go on to the next one. We have a lot of celebrity cars in the museum. This is the Lana Turner Chrysler. It's a 1941 Chrysler Newport dual-cowl Phaeton. It was a show car, and there were 6 produced and only 4 known to exist today.
It's really sleek, beautiful lines.
Yeah, it has great lines. And I understand you like John Wayne.
Well, I
have
do.
something to show you.
All right. Whoa, there's the Duke.
This is a John Wayne Corvette. It's a 1953, which was the first year of production. John Wayne bought the car sight unseen, and unfortunately he was too tall for it.
I imagine.
Yeah, when it was delivered, he gave it to his best friend, Ward Bond.
Oh, he should have given it to me.
He should have.
Welcome back to My Classic Car. Not too long ago, we had the opportunity to interview the legendary Carroll Shelby. Some of you may remember the story we did about his racing career that included the development of the Cobras, Shelby Mustangs, Daytona Coupes, and GT40s. Even though the Cobras and Daytona Coupes were highly successful, it was the GT40 program that finally gave Shelby and Ford the ultimate prize, the World Sports Car Championship. The stated goal of both Henry Ford II and Carroll himself was to beat old man Ferrari at any cost. And in 1966, they did just that, dominating the Ferraris on the track and bringing home to Dearborn the World Championship. We asked Carroll about the GT40 program and his sometimes stormy relationship with Ford.
There's been a lot of misconceptions where the GT40 came from. Don Fry went over and tried to buy Ferrari and got turned down. So then he says, we're going to build our own car. And I said, there's already a car built that'll be at Le Mans this year that might have some potential. And it was a coupe built by Eric Broadley. And so Hal Sperlich, who was really the father of the Mustang, along with Don Fry, and Ray Geddes and I went to Le Mans, talked to Eric Broadley, took John Wire with us, put a proposal together to take to Don Fry that they put a program together, buy the car from Eric Broadley, and they put a program together to build us a coupe. And that was before we ever called it the GT40. I think somebody called it the GT40 because it's 40 inches high, if I remember the story right. But Don bought onto the program, and John Wire stayed on, built the first cars, and we'd send them over to make race cars out of them at our shop. And we raced them in 64 and 65. We raced the GT40, John Wire raced it some, we raced it, took it Le Mans. In 65 we decided that we'd let Ford build the engines because they had done a lot of work on a 289. Lo and behold, Henry Ford was over there with his new wife and his 15-year-old son, Edsel, and a supplier at the last minute hadn't heat treated the head bolts right, and every one of them were so soft that all the engines were gone, and man, Henry was cranky. And he called Don Fry and I in. He hired Leo Beebe, who had been his commanding officer in the Navy. He brought Leo in, put him in charge of the racing program, called us in and says, and he already had a little sign made, said, Ford wins Le Mans in '66, signed HF2. So Don Fry and I sat around there in his office and listened to it. Yes, sir, Mr. Ford. Yes, sir, Mr. Ford. And walked back down the hall, and Don says, he didn't mention anything about the fiscal part of this thing, did he? I said, I don't remember, did we? Walked back in. He said, Mr. Ford, what are our fiscal restrictions? He said, just what it says on that sign. We win Le Mans in '66. And that was the beginning of the darndest racing program that there's ever been, because when Henry Ford said that a program was going to go at Ford, I mean, everybody stood at attention, and he was absolutely monarch around there, and everybody got out of our way. Then we won in '67, and there's a whole story there that there's no sense in going into. And then John Wire took the little GT40 with a 289 after they changed the rules, said no more 7-liters, and won in '68 and '69. Yeah, there was always political problems. There were always people like that were jealous of what we were doing, but basically that's the reason I've always been so thankful for Ray Geddes and Lee Iacocca. If it got real bad, I could go to Lee, but there were the factions that, the Holman, Moody factions, the stock car factions that didn't want anybody to spend money on my programs, and at any time you deal back there, unless you take money out of your own pocket and use them for what they're good for, you're going to have political problems. You always have that dealing with those people, because there's always somebody in there that think that that are jealous because they didn't get to do it themselves working for the company. They don't want to see anybody else do it. So we had those problems, but there was a lot of pluses too. We couldn't have accomplished what we did without them, without any doubt. And so many wonderful people that I could mention: Sully, Bill Ennis, Don Fry, all those people that made it happen. I mean, there'll never be another program like that. Actually, I lost all interest in '68. Yeah, it just got to be too much when we were trying to get things done, and Henry Ford brought Bunky Knutson in, who was a fine guy, which really pissed Iacocca off. And they were so busy fighting each other that nothing got done around there for a couple years, and it was through nobody's fault, I guess, just something that happens in a big company. And I said I didn't want any more of that. I guess I might have been kind of childish. I didn't have my guy to throw an armor-proof vest around me when I wanted to do something, so I picked up my marbles and went to Africa.